Okay, just got the new stream key. Okay, so that seems to be working. We'll also see if Restream's working. It's been a while, and I don't know that I have Restream hooked up to the right YouTube and Facebook. Although, you know what? No, it should be. We'll see. Okay, let me just update this real quick. There we go. Okay, that's all saved. And that's running. And I don't know about YouTube, and I don't know about Facebook. So we will just start. Let's see. Hey, I'm assuming that I'm streaming. I'm getting, okay, so good. I am getting YouTube. Hey, Samuel, pre-drag, AK Chang. I am getting YouTube and Twitch. Facebook I couldn't figure out, and Discord I couldn't figure out. So I'm going to have to go with just those today. I apologize to all the Facebook and Discord people. But I will figure that out at some point. So let's do this real quick. We'll do a little warm-up this morning. We're going to start with, I'm going to hit the comma key here, and we're going to just grab the anime head, turn off the floor, turn off perspective, and move my OBS down so it's not bugging me, and turn off align cursor to surface, and we're ready to go. So one thing we were going to do was that Dragon Ball Z hair, and we'll figure out a couple different ways to do that. I'm just kind of eyeballing some reference right now, basically, you know, good old Google. I'm trying to figure out the best way to kind of go about making these things. It looks like the most straightforward way would just be using NanoMesh, but I kind of want to break up the clumps a little bit. So what we're going to do is we'll start with a, let's start with a sweep profile. So we're going to go here, and we're going to go into initialize, and we're going to take this sweep profile, and we're just going to open up one of these ends here, and that's going to kind of give us our overall curve here. We can go ahead and just drag that off, and we can kind of just put in a slight kind of curve to a point type thing, and you can tap anywhere on this curve to kind of manipulate that. So once we have that, I'm going to go ahead and do a make polymesh 3D, and we'll go ahead and do a boy, it's been a while. Where am I at? Okay, ZBrush, I'm in my custom menu, and we need to do a polish my features open circle. So that'll give us our overall shape. Close holes, mirror and weld, turn on X to go into X symmetry here. And there we go. So we've got our basic cone shape. So now I don't want to sculpt this because I think sculpting's probably, if we hit Control D, that's going to give us our resolution here. And you can go in here with like your Damien standard brush or whatever, and you can kind of sculpt out that hair shape. And it looks like they all just kind of go through here and they taper. So something like this is what you could use as kind of an InsertMesh brush. It also looks like they kind of go out and then back in. So we'll go ahead and smooth that out. And we'll go ahead and pull this in, and we'll go ahead and, so something like this is the overall shape I'm looking for. And you could use this as your InsertMesh brush or for your NanoMesh to kind of populate it on his head if you were in a hurry, but I'm in no hurry this morning, so let's figure out maybe a better way to get some hair strands going on here. Everybody, thanks for showing up. So a couple different ways we can do that. If we want just stylized hair strands, we can go into, let's see, let's go ahead and just grab one of these, what's called polymesh stars, polymesh 3Ds. And then we're going to go to initialize Q cube, and we're just going to grab a simple cube off of here. In fact, I'm going to make it even simpler. Just do X, Y, and Z res down to 1, hit Q cube, and I like to do a little deformation unify, so that makes it ZBrush scaled. And then we're going to hit X to go across X symmetry, and I guess we'll go ahead and do a mirrored and weld geometry, modify topology, mirrored and weld across the X-axis. So I'm going to go ahead and just make a hair strand. And let's go ahead and rotate this thing 45 degrees. And let's go ahead and go into our BZMZ modeler brush, hover over an edge, hit the space bar, insert. We'll do multiple edge loops. insert multiple edge loops, and we'll put one right in the middle there, and then we'll go ahead and bevel this edge loop right here. So we get 3 equal parts, and then of course we got to take this top part, Control W, take this bottom part, Control W, and now we've got 3 equal parts here. And you know what? I guess we don't need this middle one here, so I'm going to go ahead and go into turn off X symmetry and get rid of that one there. So we've got our hair strand here. It's kind of pointing away from us. I'm going to go ahead and do a geometry crease with a crease tolerance on. That's under here, geometry crease. And I think we're good to go. So if I do B, create insert mesh new, now we've got this kind of cube that we can drag out. But of course we want to go into stroke here, and we're going to go down here to curve, turn on curve mode, and now we can start making our little hair strand curve. Of course we're going to need to go to our brush settings here, modifiers, and we'll turn on weld point, stretch, curve res, and get a nice hair strand going. And I do have these things creased so that if I did want to like hit D for dynamic subdivision, we can get that look, and we can also use that to pass more cards down in just a second. So with all that said, and of course we do have the new, in 2018 we have elastic and liquid here, so we can go through here, and as we manipulate these we can pull out different shapes, and it'll kind of stay locked, so you can pull out that resolution there if you want to. Cool feature. So we've got that. Oh, we want to taper this thing too. So we're going to go ahead and go down here to our brush. Nope. Stroke. Curve modifiers, and we're going to turn on intensity and size, and I'm going to go thick to thinnish. So now when we drag this out, we got a nice thick to thin taper. That might be a little too much taper. There we go. So now if I go back to our what our hair is going to end up looking like here, we can use this as our guide. So we can use this to kind of stick to, I'm going to turn off X symmetry here, and we can just drag down this, and let's delete lower. There we go. And I also want to go into curve mode, sorry, brush depth, and we're going to embed this. You know what, let's embed it quite a bit. So if I tap this, it's going to go ahead and update. So we can go ahead and I'm just going to tap off, and that'll be how much it embeds. And you know what, now that I look at it from this vantage point, I do want to go ahead and let's go ahead and taper that to a very thin point. So you can go through here, you can use this to kind of just go through and give yourself some hair strands along the shape you have, like something like this. And then once you're happy with that, you can hold down Control Shift, isolate that, invert that, and then you can split hidden. And now you've got a subtool here. We can go into solo mode, you can hit D, and now we've got dynamic subdivision. Oops, looks like when I grabbed this one, I had a little poly group at the top there. So we'll go ahead and grab that one right off there, invert that, delete hidden. So now we've got this kind of looks like a little ice cream. And let's see, we can also go into our crease settings. So geometry crease, you can drop that crease level down to like say 2, and then of course you got to go into your dynamic subdivision, smooth, and put that at like 3, and then it'll kind of crease up to a certain level. That's why I have all these here. So I'm going to set this to 1 and then crease 3. There we go. So we can kind of get that kind of look. Let's say crease 2. So you can kind of go through here and you can spiral these things around, which we're going to do in just a second. So that would be a quick way to kind of get stylized clumps. And of course we can do a better job than that. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And then we're going to go ahead and hit Control W. We'll go ahead and close holes. Control W. There we go. So we'll still use this as our base, but we'll do a little bit of a nicer job. Hey everybody, thanks for showing up. Alrighty. So we're going to do the streaming topics. Go get a Dragon Ball Z hair, and we'll see. I mean, it shouldn't take us that long. Just looking at the reference, I'm trying to come up with a couple different ways we could, you know, make this a little bit more interesting. Because, like I said, you can go with this and call it a day, but we can do better than that. So we've got our shape out, and then we've got our brush set up. So now, let me think, because we could also ZBrush this and do modeling, like a Z modeler type thing, where we put this into sets as well. That might get a little bit tricky. Let's stick with what we got. So we got this thing here, and now we can just drag up through, and then this is going to give us our hair strand. So I'm going to place these a little more carefully, and these are tapering a little bit more. And you know what? I do want to turn off elastic. That's something I don't want, or whatever I have on liquid or elastic, I forget. That's under stroke here. Let's go ahead and turn that off. So now when I pull down, it'll just pull along that surface. But I do want it embedded that far, I believe. And also with 2018, when your cursor turns blue, of course, you can manipulate the curve. And if you hold down Control, it'll twist around the curve. And seems to be based on something that it doesn't like on this particular object, which is okay. I don't really need to curve it, but let's see if we tap off. And let me see if this will work. Okay, that one works. Yeah, for some reason, it just didn't like that one. Okay, so we'll go ahead and pull through here. And we can, we're going to update these curves that I'm putting on here, and you can make them bigger or smaller. You can tap S and make the brush size bigger, or tap S and make them smaller. And we'll use NanoMesh to populate this on the head, I believe. But we'll edit these individually after we split them off. You can also change the depth if you want to get them deeper or more shallow. I'm just trying to embed them quite a bit so that we can make sure they're okay as far as like making the overall shape. Because if I put the depth too high, so if I turn the depth way up here and I just drag them on, we're going to get a very, very thick cone. I want to match this cone that we have blocked out, so I'm going to kind of embed them quite a bit. And you can also, you don't have to go straight up, although that's just the way his hair strands look like they're going. If you want to be a little bit fancier, you can go through here and you can just like, you know, build a helix in. And I think this would be the method I would prefer to do, just to kind of give it a little motion and design as opposed to just poofs straight up. But you know what? This is what it is. So this is what we're going to do. So we've got this in here, and we'll just keep going until all these spaces are filled up. And then we'll go through there and we'll massage it just a bit once we get this overall shape. And again, this isn't like, oh, here's the perfect tutorial on how to do this hair. I'm just kind of winging it. So we may have to play with this a little bit as we go. And as always, if you guys have any suggestions, shout them out. And we'll give them a shot. So I've got this. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of our underlying shape. I don't think we need that anymore. I'm going to go ahead and split that off. I'll keep it around just in case I do want to go back to it, but I'm going to turn off the eyeball. So now we've got our hair here, and we don't need that curve brush polygroups anymore. I'm going to hit Control W, make it all one polygroup. Actually, even better, I'm going to go down here to your polygroup menu and do auto groups. And now you can manipulate these individually. You don't have to go into polygroups. You can, for example, go in here to AutoMasking. If we do have polygroups, you can change mask by polygroups up to 100, and then just go in here and start moving these things around individually. Of course, you can also just go down here to topological, and you can do the same thing. So for now, I'm going to make sure that these bottoms are all tucked in so that they're all fairly invisible. And we can also preview what this would look like smooth using dynamics. I'm going to hit D on my keyboard. And again, we got dynamic turned on, and then our crease level, I'm going to set the, like, say 2, and then smooth subdiv to 3. So that'll give us our overall look here. And I'll show you a little trick. If you want to continue using these stylized hair cards to make more hair cards if you want. So we'll go over that in just a second. That's a trick I learned from Tony Reynolds. Let's see. Okay. And this one here, we'll scooch. All right. So, and also you're going to notice these are pretty hollow. If you wanted to go in there and fill up those spaces, you could just make a thinner cone and then continue building up on the outside. I don't think I'll need to fill those up. I don't think I'm going to have any lighting issues or anything like that. I'm just going through here and kind of making these strands a little bit nicer. They're very regular, and they aren't how I would typically model hair, like I said, you usually want hair to kind of helix and kind of give you a little more natural feel. But looking at the reference, natural feel is not what we're going for here. You could also go, you can turn off, I'm going to go back into Mask by Polygroups here, go into my Inflate brush, and you can go through here and you can smooth individual strands. I'm going to hold down Shift. I'm going to turn down that Z intensity on the smooth. So I can kind of thin out some of these strands here, like so, just to kind of get some more variance, since I didn't really make a whole lot of variance on my size of these things. So I'm just going to do it after the fact, and then go into my Inflate brush, and then I can go through here and quickly just kind of fatten up some of these strands. I'll keep that one thin, and then on either side I can kind of fatten up. And if you want to make these pointier on the end, you can hold down Shift, and again just kind of, now this would also be the taper on your brush as well. And if you want to, you can just turn off Mask by Polygroups, and then you can just go through here and just get all these at once. And if we are going to 3D print this thing, you're going to want to make sure all the holes are closed ideally, so you don't have any spaces. You can DynaMesh all this together, get a nice envelope. Something like that. So that's my polygroups up to 100. We'll go ahead and tuck this one back in here. Boy, I'm having a hard time. There we go. Let's turn on polyframe there, which I think is Shift F. All right, so there's our hair. Let's turn Mask by Polygroups up to 100. And at this point, you can move them all around at once and get whatever kind of look, going for a Jimmy Neutron look or whatever. You can do that. Everybody good so far? So question, your GDC talk, do you think creating a pipeline for accomplishing any entertainment or art project when you have Mozarts and non-Mozarts working together, does the creation of pipeline not slow those Mozarts down? No, and I think Mozarts think they're faster than they really are, and they may be faster, and by Mozarts I just mean people who are really good at their job. It's not a bad term, obviously. But when you have a team of 60 and you have 3 people who are really good at their job, there's still only 3 people. So even if they're super good at their job and they're good, they have these tool sets and they just sit at their desk and they get a lot of stuff done, that doesn't scale across a team. I would rather have 60 people working at full capacity than 57 people working at minimum capacity and then 3 people working at full capacity, or above full capacity, if that makes sense, because they're so efficient, so good. I would, it's that scalability that I'm more interested in. And of course, you don't want to set up a workflow or a pipeline that's going to make your really good people feel stifled. If anything, it should make them even faster because it makes their processes procedural so that everybody gets the same boost that they inherently have. It's just spread out among the team. So whatever they're doing and whatever they're doing well, that just gets propagated out to the rest of the people on the team in the form of tools and workflows and pipelines. And in that way, everybody can kind of be a Mozart, or at least starts approaching Mozart level. But yeah, you're right. You don't want to set up a workflow or a pipeline where your really good people are like, oh, I had everything set up the way I liked, and everything I'm doing now is just super slow because I have to work in this shitty pipeline that you set up. And that should never be the case. It should only be it should really, ideally, only be automating the stuff that nobody likes to do. And I mean, if you really enjoy doing UV massaging and that's your call in life, maybe you can find some place to do that. I don't think that's generally the attitude I hear when I see really boring CG tasks. I don't hear a lot of people clamoring to be the guy who sits in his desk for 10 hours a day retopologizing or doing UVs. I'm sure they exist, and I don't even think that's necessarily a bad thing. But it's kind of like self-driving cars. It's like, well, it's great that you love driving. I don't have any problem with people who love driving, but most people, their driving doesn't consist of going up and down the Pacific coast highways and breathing in that fresh air and not sitting in traffic and just having a good time. Most people's driving experience is pretty shitty. Going to work, sitting in stop and go traffic for 2 hours, and it's not a thrilling experience. So if we just automate that, I think 99% of people would be pretty happy with not having to deal with driving anymore. And then also makes it more efficient and faster, so that everybody's going faster and gets to where they need to go. And you know, yeah, you don't get to stop and smell the roses anymore. But then again, was anybody really stopping and smelling the roses while they were retopologizing or doing UVs or other repetitive tasks that aren't very creative? Is it a skill to have? For sure. Driving is another skill to have, and hopefully, just like if we want to go through here, you know, and have driving parks, so you just like where you can ride your horses, you can go somewhere and drive in the canyons on Route 66 and have just a beautiful drive. But everybody's commutes won't be stifled by people trying to have a beautiful drive at 8 o'clock in the morning on, you know, pick your favorite highway at 8 o'clock in the morning and see how much you really enjoy driving. If that makes any sense. Everybody, thanks for showing up. Yes, so the reference images is just, I just Googled Dragon Ball Z Go-Getta. And I'm just looking at kind of getting an overall view, and I can't tell the fan art from the real art, I don't think. So I'm just kind of going with the most repeated images I see. Hey, so question from the how to make any brush like move topologicals? Yeah, that's a good point. So you can't probably make any brush like move topological, but you can turn topological on for any brush. So if you go into, like, say, the standard brush, all you got to do is go into AutoMasking and turn on topological. Probably not so useful for a standard brush, but like for the move brush, it's super useful, as well as maybe snake hook. You can turn on topological with your snake hook here. And if you turn on Sculptris Pro, obviously we talked about this the last couple times. Oh, you know what? Now that I think about it, so we got snake hook here, and I think we have, oh, masking by polygroups. So turn masking by polygroups off, and then you can use Sculptris Pro. So backface masking will gray out Sculptris Pro, as well as mask by polygroups will gray out Sculptris Pro. But topological, oh, it also grays out Sculptris Pro, so never mind. So if you do want to use Sculptris Pro with snake hook, have all that off there. You can, that doesn't mean you can't isolate it, mask it, oops, or hit W and then Control tap any one of these polygroups and then go in here with Sculptris Pro. So you can mask if you want to. Boy, that's giving me some interesting results. Let me look at some settings here real quick. Tessmate, no. We are looking for NanoMesh Tessmate. That's fine, that's fine. Curve, I think we're done with. Boy, it's been a while since I've been in here. My weekends are freed back up, so I will be getting the ZBrush 2018 stuff out pretty soon. So that'll be good. Geez, what am I looking for here? Give me a second. Okay, my drive. It would be under Tools, you're right, it'd be under Brush, Sculptris Pro. So it's enabled using global, and then under the global settings here, we got Tessmate, and launch this, please. Stroke, Sculptris Plus, there we go, Sculptris Pro. Adaptive size combine turn on should be fine. This all looks fine. You know what? It looks like it's... you know what? Maybe it is fine. Maybe because I have it creased, if I do uncrease all... There we go. I was just seeing the creases, and it was doing something weird to my brain. So what it's doing is I'm dragging this out. It's also creasing it's taking that creasing and kind of applying it. Okay, so sorry about that tangent. So, okay, so back where we were going. So now this may look nice and smooth and subdivided. In fact, we can continue smoothing this up with our dynamic subdivisions here. But really, it's not that many points. I think we've got 800 active points, so it's actually pretty small. We can do Shift-D, we can turn that off. And now we can use this to populate the pods on his head. Let's go ahead and do maybe a pinch brush up here, and we'll kind of pinch that to an even finer point here. That'll work. So we've got our heads here, and we've got this thing here. So I'm going to go down to the top. We're going to go to Brush, create Insert Mesh, New, and now you can go around the head, and you can just populate out this stuff if you want to. Now we're not going to, I'm going to try something else in just a second here, but if you wanted to do a quick and dirty version, that would be it. Also, when you're inserting these things, just like we were doing with our hair strands, you can take this depth, kind of bury it a little bit here, so you can kind of just get that just so it kind of cones out here. Now obviously you're probably going to want to turn off X symmetry so it's not so symmetrical, but something like that. And then we can go and isolate his head here, split hidden, and now you can hit D, and now you've got all of these things. Let's go ahead and do a crease level of 2, smooth it to a 3. There we go. And then maybe brush. You can have a little bit of fun kind of going through here and using your spiral brush if you want to kind of break this up a little bit. Again, not something that's going to match the reference, but if you did have a character like that, you can use that just to really quickly populate some hair. So there's that. Let's try something else though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this head off, and I'm going to go back to my reference here, and we're going to look at where this hair is at. So it kind of looks like he's got a widow's peak here. Let's turn off our line like so, and it goes up and around, whoops, like here, and then down over the ears, and on the back of his head it looks like it's still those big old chunks. So if we want to kind of maybe use NanoMesh to populate this, I'm not saying NanoMesh is going to be the greatest way to do this, but we'll give it a shot. And it also looks like we're going to need a hair cap anyways, because no, maybe not. Even his sideburns are just an extension of just a huge cone that sticks out of his head. So I take it back. So anyway, we're just setting up a map of where we want this hair to go. And then we'll see if we can't use NanoMesh to dictate how these things are populated. So we duplicated the head off. We're going to hit Control W to isolate, Control Shift to tap that top part, delete hidden, geometry modify topology, delete hidden. And you know what, before we do that, let's go back. So while this is masked, just to get a cleaner cut along here, we're going to do an edge loop mask border, and then isolate, and then delete hidden. That'll give us a smoother cut along here so we don't have to use our macro or mask and smooth. So we got that. Let's go ahead. We have X symmetry turned on under transform. And we're going to go ahead and do a ZBrush, talk about polygon, let's do half, adapt the size down to 0, hit ZBrush. And so adapt the size down to 0 just gives us nice even quads, which I think may be what we're looking for here. And I'm just going to simplify the heck out of this. Now while it's simplifying, I can go through here and we can go to solo mode. And we can help it out a little bit if we need to, just to kind of dictate this shape. I think it's doing a great job though. It's keeping that point down the middle. If we want to like square this off or anything, we just pull those out and then just continue ZBrushing half. Transparency mode. Ooh, let's see if we can keep pushing it. Half, half, half. Okay, yeah, I think we're at the lower bounds of what we're going to get out of this, which is fine. So we'll go ahead and let's go ahead and do a deformation inflate, and we'll kind of get that closer to the hair cap here. And now we can kind of use this as a way to populate our nanomeshes. So we have our sweep selected out there. So at any point we can go to our ZBrush or ZModeler brush, BZM, hit M, go ahead and select that, and now when we hover over our face, we can do Insert NanoMesh, Polygroup All, and then we can just insert these little cones, and we can put one in each. Let's go ahead and turn off transparency mode. So with NanoMesh, we can go through here. We can also use, would fiber mesh be a good way? I don't know. We'll give this a shot. Like I said, I'm not sure it's going to work. We would have to simplify this because we're getting a lot of little squares on his head. But just to kind of show you this, you can change the Z offset here. Z rotation, we'll go ahead and set up 0. Y rotation doesn't matter. X rotation is what we're looking for. So X rotation, let's say -90. There we go. So that'll give us a start, and that is a very, very precise layout for that. But you can also just start here. You can also do length. Well, let's see, length here. So here's your length variances, so you can change them on the fly. You can also change the size, overall size based on those. You can also tell it to fit within each square or fill the square or just stay proportional. If you do fit, it looks like we'll have to swing these around. So let's see, X rotation at 0. Let's say 90. And then change the size from here, and then the offsets, oops. I'll stick them in there. But like I said, it's a lot of squares, it's a lot of hairs. I think that might be a bit much. So we'll go back to, we'll keep our hair cap, but we'll go ahead and turn off NanoMesh, and we'll just do it manually here. So with our hair cap selected, we got our brush selected with our InsertMesh Brush, and we're going to go ahead, oops, not our InsertMesh Brush, that's our NanoMesh. There we go. So now we can go through here and just stick all these on, and although, you know what, it does look like he's fairly symmetrical. Let's turn off line here, and we can break symmetry once we're done. Oh, and once we've dragged these out, we can feel free to go ahead and rotate these things around as needed, scale them in and out. Now we can even pull these down so they fill in that point a little bit better. It looks like they kind of maybe curve out along this way. And you know what? We can even match, let's see, hold on. Save image as to my desktop. Let's match it up. Texture, import. Desktop. There we go. And you know what? He's kind of looks like he's... Is his hair supposed to lean off to the side? Hard to say. If we did want to correct that just temporarily, we can just rotate that around. There we go. So if we match up the head here-ish, we can start dialing in. Now obviously he's looking down a little bit, so we can kind of match his head shape and then start dialing in his hair to the right size. So, and you know what? We can even paint in his face if we want to. So we can kind of line up his face here. Let's have X turned on. We can turn on RGB, and we can just paint in that face there. So that could even give us a good start for if we want to model his head there. So we've got that on there, and I'm going to go ahead and save this camera view. So we're going to go up here to Movie, Timeline, Show, tap to put a little dot in there, and then go ahead and unshow that timeline. So now if we move this guy around, we can just use our arrow keys to, you know, left and right, and that'll snap us back to there. So now back to these things here, we can scale these up, rotate them back. And then, like I said, they kind of come to a point here. Now we may have to separate these pieces out. And by that I mean I'm just going to do a split mask points. It's under your subtool split menu. And I'm going to go ahead and say, give me all these. Well, hit X to go across X symmetry so it's off, and then Control-Shift-A, split hidden. And now we can move these things independently and make sure they kind of stick together down here. We can also, again, turn on D. Dynamic preview here, and again, crease level 2, smooth subdiv of 3. There we go. And then again, arrow keys to snap us back into position, and we're off to the races. Shift Z, There we go. Cool. Thanks for showing up, everybody. What's a good, appealing way to present a character per portfolio? That's a good question. Go to ArtStation and look at your favorite person who does really nice presentations of character stuff. And don't look at mine, because mine's not nice. I would say good lighting and good materials will save any character model. And then also, if you can kind of set them, ideally, you can put them in a scene with a pose and really kind of sell your character quite a bit, instead of doing what I do, which is lazy man's front 3/4, back 3/4 with whatever lighting I happen to throw into an image in whatever rendering program I'm using. You know, kind of settle a little bit. Cool. Trying to catch up here. Give me a second. I'm just going really quickly through the comments, so if I miss one, and again, I apologize to the Discord users and the Facebook users. I can't log in through Restream, and it's kind of hard for me to keep track of. So, bumpy bump. Oh, thanks. So, Kieran says it's almost if you talk 1.25 speed on YouTube video settings for showing how quick you get through stuff. That's just by habit more than anything. I get dinged a lot on how fast I talk, but like you said, on YouTube you can change it to whatever speed you'd like. So if I am going a little bit fast for you guys, feel free to go to that little gear. Well, I guess not during live streams, but when you come back to the archives, go to the little gear icon and drop it back. Hey Hannibal, thanks for showing up. Pro says arrow key to snap into position. Yeah. Oh yeah. So I guess I should show you that. So move. So when we go here to show, so if you brought in a character sheet that was like, front, side, and back, as you use your arrow keys, basically what you're doing is you're going between the front, side, and back here. So you can use that. And honestly, it would be great if I did. You know what? Let's see. Let's see if we can find a character sheet. Oh, yes, we can find one. You know what? This might work. Oh, man, he gets long hair, too, like an 80s hairband. You can probably tell I've never actually watched this. But, so yeah, I did find a character sheet. Let me save this. Save as desktop. So let's do this. Let's actually do this. We're going to go to texture, import, and we're going to go grab that last thing I grabbed. I'm going to select it, add it to my spotlight. If we don't need this one anymore, we can go ahead and just delete that. We can go ahead and scale this up so that the heads are filling most of the space here. And now what I can do is, if you want to get rid of these, you can just drag these off here. And now we can set these up. So now we've got, like, here's our back 3/4 of our head lined up. So now we can add a little dot. And then over here, and you just tap on the timeline to make the dot. And then here we can line up where the head goes, somewhere in here. This will actually be pretty useful because, again, it's one way to match it from the front, but then you don't know the draft or anything like that. So we'll put a dot here, and then on the front, where we're doing the bulk of our work, we can line up our head here and tap on. So now if we go over here, and again, I'm just using the arrow keys to kind of go through these different views, and I would probably set this up in Photoshop a little bit better so I get a little more real estate as I'm sculpting, but that's okay. And then we'll go over here to movie, turn off show, and it's still there, so you can still use your arrow keys to cycle through these, but So anyway, we got this here, and we've turned off X symmetry so we can kind of move these independently. And so I'm going to go back one, and we're going to say, oh, you know what? We need to rotate these things back quite a bit, it looks like. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to go through here and finesse these things as needed. I'm going to hit Alt to kind of center that, and we'll push this back here. So something like that. And you'll notice that, you know, when you were getting 2D concepts, things aren't going to line up, so you're going to maybe have to pick one or the other. That's just kind of the nature of the beast, but that's okay. We'll just kind of dial it in as good as we can. So again, go back to our brush here. And instead of using NanoMesh or any sort of auto-population thing, we are going to have to brute force this just a little bit. So let's go ahead, and if we want to stick with one of these, we can just hold down Control and drag off a copy. And kind of go ahead and position it like so, like off to the side here. And that'll give us a good start, and now we can just scale this up as needed. And we'll go ahead and scale it this way as well, kind of thin that out just a bit. And then we'll go to that last view here, and we'll just line up this thing here. We can scale it non-uniformly as needed first before you start using your move brush. So we can kind of line that up, and if we want to, we can go ahead and do another split mask points, just split that off into its own subtool. We can also do a quick, again, you can Control drag off copy. We can also duplicate this one, and then we can just use deformation mirror across an x-axis, hold down Alt, put this in the middle, and now we can just stick this right through here. Now probably what I would do first is just go ahead and populate all of these shapes here, and then turn it to the side and massage it into the right place. But if you want to go and make sure that you're, you know, basically, it looks like the biggest deal is rotating these things back as we go. So not a huge deal. Let me match this up. And then this one, again, let's kind of rotate these back. Because yeah, it's going back at a pretty steep angle here. So we want to match this front view, but we also want to make sure that on the back view everything's sweeping back. Cool. Trying to add a tattoo to your sculpt. It's tribal arm and chest sleeve. How? You could do that a couple different ways. If you're doing it for a video game, it might be a good idea to do it as a decal, so that you can swap them out, but that's more of a post thing. If you just want to do it in ZBrush, I would say poly paint. And now that you can poly paint with Sculptress, for example, we've already poly painted on this guy, but if we wanted to put a tribal tattoo on his head here, we can certainly do that. So I can go in here with my standard brush. You know what, let's clone off the standard brush. We'll make it a drag rect, change focal shift down to -100. We'll go into my comma key alpha. I didn't copy my alphas. Okay, note to self, bring my alphas back. Do I have alphas saved somewhere? I don't think I do. Damn. All right, well, we're going to do poor man's tattoos, and we're just going to go into our alphas here. And we're going to say, oh, hey, here's an alpha. So on this one, what I'm going to do is go to my alpha, modify, and we're going to invert. Actually, we don't have to modify that. We're going to invert that. We have a white already assigned. If we turn on that colorize, we can see we are just, turn off polyframe, we are just filled with a white, and then we poly paint on the front here. So if we change this to a black, and then again have RGB turned on, let's change it up to 100. You can just drag this out, and there's your tattoos. So you can just go through here and you can tattoo up however you'd like. If you want to just draw on the tattoos, you can do that. So we'll go back to just a regular standard brush, RGB turned on, and you can just kind of just draw out your tattoos, or you can mask first. So you can hold down Control, we'll change that to a drag rect, get our brush alpha focal shift down to -100. So you can drag out, oops, Control, focal shift. There we go. So you can drag on a mask first, and then you can invert that mask, you can blur that mask, you can tighten that mask up, you can just Control Alt, and then Control. So Control Tap to blur, Control Alt to sharpen, and then you can do color, fill object, and fill it with whatever. And that was the RGB intensity of 28, so that's why it kind of went gray. But that's another way you can do it. Let's see, Control off dots, or you can just go through here and hold down Control and just mask this stuff out. Now you're going to notice that it's not super high density, because if we turn on line, you're going to see this is the density of our mesh. However, the good news is you can turn on Sculptris Pro mode, have RGB turned on. Let's crank that up to 100, and now your RGB intensity, it'll automatically tessellate where you want your RGB to go. So you can go through here and make very, very clean lines. If you turn this off, you're going to see we're getting kind of a jagged result. That's because it's just poly painting on the vertices. When we have Sculptris Pro mode on, it's giving us more vertices to draw on, so it's giving us a much smoother result, especially, you know, depending on your brush size. Now, again, if we turn Sculptors Pro mode off, you're going to see that's the result we're getting. But then if you look at the geometry and we turn off colorize here, you're going to see we're getting a lot more polygons when we had Sculptors Pro mode turned on. So that's why that's happening. If you need your geometry to stay the same, obviously you don't want to use Sculptors Pro mode. You want to just subdivide up if you want to like keep your UVs or something, but that's one option for you. You can also use a stencil. I haven't really used a stencil. You can also use, like I mentioned before, if you, let's say your tattoo is in Spotlight, you can have RGB turned on and you can just paint through Spotlight to tattoo as well. Or you can use, I use Substance Painter to put on a different layer where my tattoos go. Or like I said, if you're doing it in a video game, you can make a decal sheet, an Atlas decal sheet that you can just move your UVs to and just populate. I guess you could do another UV set too, but you can use decals to put tattoos on your character and swap out. Here's I put my character in a pose inside Unreal because it's a game character with minimal scene setup. I think that's good enough. There's certainly varying degrees of good enough and too much, but I think, yeah, that's going above and beyond what I've done. And you know what? That's a good point. So if you were doing a sleeve, or if it would be easier for you to kind of poly paint, say, let's go ahead and duplicate this head off. And I'm going to go ahead and do a trim curve. So we're going to slice his neck off here. So we're going to get a poly group down here at the bottom. And I think that'll work. We can, if we want to also, if we want to kind of dictate, I like to use poly groups. Let's try that again. And I'm going to grab both of these down here. So we got our polygroups here. I'm going to go ahead and do a very quick Z-remesher, target polygon. Let's do half, depth of size down, keep groups, smooth groups up is fine. Give it a second here. So I'll give you another way to maybe do tattoos. Wait for it. And let's do half. And you can always project back to get your details back. I'm going to skip that part because we're just talking about tattoos. And let's do half. And let's do half. Okay, so we've got our head, we've got our poly group. So if I want to go ahead and UV this, let's go to Z plugin, UV master. So it is symmetrical, so we can keep that. We'll turn polygroups on, and we'll hit unwrap, and we'll hit flatten. So here's our UVs. If you want, if we do unflatten, well, let's see. We can do flatten. I guess that'll work. Let's see if this will work. Oh, you know what? A lot of times you're going to want to do work on clone first if you have subdivision history, especially. But what we can do now is we can just subdivide our character up, and then as we go through here and we start poly painting, for example, it's like, okay, now we're poly painting. We're not using Sculptors Pro mode because we want to keep our UVs, but we're poly painting this. We can go over here and we can hit flatten, and it's only allowed if you don't have subdivision levels, so you're not able to flatten. But let's see if we can go down here to our UVs, and let's say if we morph to our UVs here, and then if we continue painting, let's turn off X symmetry here. So you can go through here and you can bring in Spotlight if you want to. Oops, we moved this, so I'm going to have to move that back to match up our camera. You can go through here and you can paint your tattoos on there, or you can just use masking or anything else that you've done, and then turn off Morph UV. It doesn't keep it. Ah, that would be great if it did. There might be a way to do that. I'm almost positive there is. I mean, worst case scenario, all you have to do is one thing you can do is you can go to ZBrush to Photoshop. I think you can turn on, can you turn on UVs in here? No. UV master. Think. Because you can take these UVs into a zap link, basically. So if you go to your UV map, let's do texture map, create new from UV check. So you can take, this texture here, export it. So texture, let's go ahead and clone our texture. The texture with it selected, export, and then you can take that into Photoshop, do all this in Photoshop. You can also use Go Z and throw it into Photoshop and then paint on the head. So you can use Photoshop to kind of paint and bring it back in as a poly paint. You can take these UVs into Photoshop and then paint on them and then bring them in and go to texture import and then go to poly paint from texture and transfer that to your poly paint if you want. So a couple different ways. Again, I don't want to get too far behind, so I apologize in advance if I skip your stuff. If I close a project and reopen, is the movie shot saved? It might not be, but you should be able to go into movie and timeline. You can load and save timelines in here. So I'm not positive if file save is going to save it, but worst case scenario, you can save your movie out. Let's go ahead and delete that here. Let's go back here. And just really quickly, I'm going to so we're going to set this back here, and then because I moved this, I'm going to put this back where it should go, I think, somewhere in here. Yeah, something like that. So we've got our head set up, so let's go ahead and really quickly, let's say brush, grab that InsertMesh Brush, and again, let me go back to my reference here so I can see. Okay, so we got this side hair here, and it looks like he's got one that's kind of here. And again, I'm just going to really quickly stick these into place. And you can hold down Alt, and you can change that axis of rotation so you can kind of make them thinner or thicker as needed. And it's going to be a real kind of a rush job. And I can refine it when I get back to the other one. And for this one, I'm going to hold down Control and drag off a copy. I'm just going to rotate it 180 degrees and then shove it over on this side here, and we'll kind of thin it out. And we'll kind of stick this back in here. And then so we got this one, which I think may need to be more prominent. That's okay. And then I'm going to Control drag this one out. Now this one, let's go ahead and rotate this back around, is going to be pretty prominent. And again, I want to make sure we're maintaining that back sweep here. And this one's probably going to be a bit of a filler through the middle here as well. So this one's pretty big, and we can probably go ahead and scale this back out a bit. And we'll go ahead and bend it. And then the huge one is coming up. And for this one, we'll drag out a new one. So let's go back into our brush here, and we'll just drag that out, and we'll go ahead and scale it way out. And this one's going to be pretty big. Something like this. Then we hit Shift Z. You can see the rest of them are kind of just feathered in along the side here, so I think we're in good shape. So bear with me. It's not going to be the most exciting thing in the world, like so much of my other ZBrush instructional tutorials, and it's just a non-stop amazing thrill ride. It's like an adventure every time, except for this part. Okay, so something like this, and then Control copy to drag off. And this is where it would be nice to kind of finesse with maybe a like a fiber mesh would be kind of a cool way to do this. And I'm going to show you not a fiber mesh way, but a hair card way where you can turn these into hair cards if you want to at the very end. We'll see how that goes. So we got this, and then let me get a back view. Instead of using I'm going to use the spotlight to check my math on these, but for now I just want, you know, and that's probably the problem with Google. You know, another thing we can Google is it's a lot. Sometimes it's interesting if you go and you Google sculpt, because probably, yes, they've already figured out the best way. So for example, there's miniatures that have been made of Dragon Ball Z and sculpts and stuff. So you can use these as a way to kind of show or just see what ones they put in and what ones they didn't and what kind of arrangement they had. But it looks pretty standard. So it looks, as you go down the back of his head here, they do get smaller and a little thinner. And again, because we're just dragging out these copies here, let's go ahead and make this one a little bigger. We'll stick this one out just a bit. And control drag this off. Let's go ahead and scale this one up too. And we can, if you want to grab any of these at any point, since they're all polygroups, different polygroups, you can just grab the chunk of one, Control-Shift-A, mask it, invert that mask, and then Control drag out a copy of that one here. And you can ZBrush these at any time. If you want a different or a lower res result, you can just ZBrush half as needed. Let's go ahead and hold on Alt, go to Unmesh Mesh Center. And we'll go ahead and thin this one out this way. And again, going for that back sweep. And you can always make this all in polygroup if you want to, if that's easier. And then you can separate it back out just using auto groups later if you want to. Anything that's not vert welded, we'll go ahead and save out as a polygroup. And you can also, if you don't want these striations in here, you can just dynamesh them all together and then ZBrush and get a smoother result, which we may do in a second here. Now it looks like we're getting a little busy back here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to redistribute. Well, no, that's what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and put in the last few, like maybe one here, one here, one here, and then one here. And I'm not making them the right size or anything, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to clump these together. Let's put in one more here. I'm going to clump these together. So let's go ahead and merge all of these chunks down. That's under Subtool Merge. So again, if I go ahead and do auto groups, it's going to make all of these into all of these pieces in their own auto groups. And then we can go through here and we can say Control Shift, select lasso. We can grab this one, Control W, and then grab this one, Control Shift A. So we can grab this one here, Control Shift A, Control W, Control Shift A, Control W. And this will make it so I can just, split these off into their groups. Control Shift A is under the visibility menu for Grow All. And I can also use this when I go to the back. Let's say grab this one here. Another exciting and one more. Now this one's getting, oops, looks like we kind of missed some in here, so I can grab this one here, invert that, and then grab these little stragglers and then merge those together. And then any of these things that are in the way, we can go ahead and isolate them. Looks like we do have some stragglers here. Whoops. Let's see if I are all good. I'm going to go ahead and split those off. And now I can grab this one. And again, here, these all look good. Split those off. Split those off. Make those all one polygroup. This one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. Okay, so now those are all regrouped nicely. So I simply have to go in here, hit W, and then I can control tap any one of these. That'll go ahead and auto mask it. And now I can go through here and make these whatever thickness that I want. I can go through here and move them independently. I can use, like we did before earlier in the show, I guess it's a show. We can use auto masking in our brush settings and mask by polygroup. And then I'm just going to kind of squish these things around here. I'm also going to do Shift D to kind of turn off that preview, just so I'm going to get a little bit more, it's a little bit more reactive in ZBrush. And I'm going to go through here, I'm going to fill these out. So I think on the back of his head, this goes all the way down to like his neck here. And of course, this is like a very childlike head that we're doing. So he's not all muscled up or anything like that, but that's okay. We can always change that. That's pretty easy to change, and then move around our hair cards as needed. So I'm going to go through here. I'm going to scale these out just a bit. And as I'm scaling them out, I want to continue to rotate these up. And if you want to use transpose, since these are all different polygroups here, you can hit W and then hit Y to go back into transpose. And now if you just click on any of these, I guess you do have to still, so you can use, oh, you know what? We got to go into our brush here. AutoMasking. Mask by polygroups up to 100. Now I think if you use transpose, yeah, it'll go ahead and, so that way, because if we don't have transpose turned on and we just click on any of these with our gizmo, it's not going to work. But we can use transpose in here to very quickly, the first one you touch, you can go through here and you can just rotate it as needed. And scale it out as needed. So it might be a little bit faster instead of control clicking with our gizmo to just simply go in here with our move brush, like so. And if you want to lengthen them out too, you can just grab the move brush and lengthen them out too. Of course, it's been a long time since I've used transpose, so I'm a little out of practice here. There we go. Fill this up. And while these are all together, you can, obviously turn off mask by polygroups down to 0. You can use deformers on this thing. So let's go ahead and go back to our gizmo. We'll reset it down the middle, and you can use like the bend arc deformer to kind of go through here and do any sort of fancy bending you want to do, or just a regular deformer if you want a little bit more control. So you can go in here like the lattice deformer, and you can mask these points out as needed. So if you want to just grab like these two over here, you can unmask them, and you can like go through here and remove, scale, and rotate these chunks. Or you can do it individually on each individual thing. So let's turn off Shift Z. We'll go back to our hair here. Get rid of that. Delete. Let's go ahead and rotate this up just a bit. Oh yeah, we were looking down with this one too. He's always looking down, so that would be why. So I probably need to resave this view. So now that we got this, we realize, okay, I need to, let's go ahead and turn back mask by polygroups up to 100, and we'll go ahead and make these things match a little bit better here. I guess he is kind of, the hair is kind of leaning over to the side. Hold on. Movie, show. Let's go ahead and get rid of these. And then I'm going to move his head down just a bit. There we go. And the other ones I can just eyeball. So now this one here, I want to kind of sweep back. So we can mask that, invert that mask. Ooh, you know what would be cool? Let's go ahead and do split hidden. Hit W. Let's go down the middle of this object here. I'm going to put my pivot so it kind of follows the flow of this strand here. Then I'm going to go into our BendCurve Deformer. And now I'm going to say curve resolution is fine. Axis is what I'm looking for. So now I can go through here and I can just manipulate these along the curve here. So that'll give me a little bit more control. So let's go back here. And now I can match this little hair strand up here. So individually you can go through here and kind of sweep these things as they need to be. Cool. And it looks like I need another hair strand out here to the side that kind of sticks out this way. And I guess we can kind of use these for our purposes here. So W. And again, if you're on the right axis here, always remember you can go back in here to that bend curve and it'll maintain your previous settings. So you can quickly kind of go through here and say, you know what, I want this to kind of be this little doodad over here. And then on the opposite side, we can say, we'll say accept that. And then W, let's go to Unmatch Mesh Center, holding down Alt, and then we'll rotate this, and then we'll rotate this. And then we'll go back in here to our bend curve. And again, we don't have to, you know, separate this out like I did before, although it might be easier with that axis there. Change our axis so we got our control points. And it's not too many control points. You just got 3 to worry about, so it's not too bad. You can also go through here and instead of just, you can twist along here if you did want to add that helix instead of using your curve to twist. If you guys can't see that enough, you can see you can go through here and you can twist along these, which will give you a much nicer look. It's not what we're going for here because he doesn't have a twist in his hair. And then you can also squeeze or in any direction here and also scale so you can kind of fatten it out a little bit. So you get a lot of control over these things here. Although it's a little, oh, I guess it's not hard to see. Sorry, I'm blind. So we can kind of fatten this out and move it up. Here we go. Alrighty. So something like this, and then you just need to go through here and fill these things out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say accept, W, move brush here, and we're just going to manually kind of shove these things around. So I'm looking for a faster solution. And also, I have to take my truck in once again. There's a rack and pinion leak, and I went to get I got my oil changed, and I had a headlight that was out, so I had them fix the headlight, and my headlight is out again a week later. So I'm afraid there's an underlying deep-seated issue here. Let's go ahead and merge these ones down again. So we'll see how that goes. And let's go ahead and scale this one up. And again, sorry it's not overly exciting, but you know, sometimes this stuff isn't that exciting. Now, when I do drag off a copy, it's going to maintain that exact same polygroup, so I probably do want to go in here and make these different polygroups. Usually it's not a big deal if you're just using plain Jane InsertMesh brushes, but oh, that's the haircut. And let's do a couple more. Actually, let's just scale out these ones here. And again, I'm just control tapping. I don't know why I keep saying and again, and again, and again. I guess because I repeat myself so damn much. Okay, good enough. So we'll go ahead and scale these things out. And again, we can inflate these things as needed using our inflate brush. We can kind of go through here and make sure there's no real scalp showing in here. Like so. Something like this. Okay, so we've got this semi on there. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. And if you want to check your work, go back here. We didn't save our camera views because I deleted them like an idiot, but we can go through here. Also make sure you have perspective turned on if you're matching your perspective view. I think we're pretty good shape though. And then -1, this little front one here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through here. We're going to drag out another one. We're going to go ahead and split this one off. This is a special little guy. And we're going to scale this so he's thinner, like so. And we're going to stretch him out just a little bit here. And we're going to stick him right where he needs to go. And then I'm not going to say it. And we're going to, turn off perspective. And we're going to say, we're going to start him kind of where he needs to go here. And since this is already going right down the axis of this hair, we're going to go through and do our bend curve. We might need a little bit more resolution. So I'm going to put some more in here. And now we can just use that bend curve to kind of dictate where this thing needs to go. So we'll kind of drop this and just easily curve. Now you can mask along these manually, but I think this is far easier. So here, here, something like that. Now there's a twist, but there's a smoothness. That looks like it's already pretty smooth. Axis, curve, resolution, symmetrical, smooth, overall smooth. Yeah, I guess that's what I want. So if you did want to square this off a little bit, you can just manually go through here. Let's turn off mask by polygroups here. Hit Control W. There we go, something like that. So now we'll merge these back down. We'll hit D for our dynamic preview. And this is what we've got so far. And mask by polygroups back up to 100. Stuff these in here. I'm not going to do a ton of cleanup work, but you can make this nicer. Now for my beauty screenshot for the channel, I might go into KeyShot real quick. See if we can put like a little bit of fire. Whoa, fire on there. All right. Ooh, okay, I'm behind again. All right, I might have to skip some of these because again, I might have to leave a little bit early today, since my wife has to take me into the mechanics and then drop me off at work. Now, yeah, if you could, so like we had like the tribal tattoo on the arm, if you could UV your arm and flatten it out and then paint it while it's flat, it might be a little bit easier. Oh, good idea. So pre-drag the smart transpose mask. That's a one I forgot. So if we go back here to the head, good point. So again, if we hit, we have our gizmo here, and I hit Y, we have a transpose in here. If we go B, T, transpose smart mask, and then we load up an alpha in here, as I hold down, let's turn off X symmetry. If we hold down Control, you're going to see we drag out a version of that alpha, and the coolest thing is you can use the space bar to move this thing around. So you can move, rotate, and kind of scale it a little bit and really get very precise placement of your mask before you drop them. Now it is going to drop them straight through, so probably you want to either hide the other side of your object or just unmask it. But good point. Thank you, pre-drag. It's very useful. Is there a way to make it 3D and put it on the arm so I can use it in KeyShot as a light source? Yeah, that would be like an extraction. So if you wanted to do that, so we'll go back to our brush transpose smart mask, and then drag this on here. And then if you wanted this to be like a self-illuminated tattoo, you could do, let's go ahead and duplicate this head off, and we'll do a edge loop mask border, and we'll go ahead and just isolate this thing, and we'll delete hidden. So now you've got a separate, separate piece of geometry sitting on his head, and you can assign any, let's hit Y here. You can assign any, you can also use extraction like I mentioned. Set that normal, damn. You can use that as a light source. It may have some Z fighting on here, so you may need to move it out just a tiny bit. There's settings and engines that'll go ahead and get rid of that. Also through here, you may want to do, you know, on a higher density mesh or View Sculptors Pro to give you a better result than that. But if you need to, you can go in here to masking, mask border, invert that. Let's go ahead and grow that mask. Wait, mask border, grow, invert, and then we'll try a polish by features just to smooth out those lines just a little bit here. And at this point, you could even ZBrush it if you wanted to. Give you a little bit of a cleaner result. And yeah, so that could be your tattoo. Like Prejug says, using Matchmaker Brush as well. And if you had something on here, it would be the Matchmaker Brush that you could put an object in front of here. Brush, insert, let's some with some decent geometry. You need something built that has a decent amount of geometry in it, so it will wrap around your object without breaking. I guess this one, it's not going to work. What am I looking for here? This will work. So you can drag this on, and then if we go ahead and split this off into its own subtool, and then BMM is the Matchmaker Brush, and then you can just pull along here, and that'll kind of make your object fit that. As well as if it's an InsertMesh Brush, it's even better. So when you insert this on, it doesn't stick. Also looks like its depth is way off. So there it'll stick to my object, and if we wanted to wrap around the underlying object, that would be this projection strength. You turn that up to 100, and now as you drag on the roundness of your object, it'll go ahead and conform that InsertMesh Brush to your object. So again, if I miss anything, I apologize in advance. I'm just kind of quickly going through here. Projection of a t-shirt is getting weird interfaces on the outer side. If your interfaces on a projection of a t-shirt, oh yeah, if you have a thin mesh, you want to make sure that you have backface masking turned on, AutoMasking backface mask, so that you're not, so if you take this one here and we thin it out, and let's go ahead and Dynamesh this. So if you're over here and you're like sculpting on it or you're painting on it or whatever, and it's pulling through the object and it's getting on the back faces and giving you that result, make sure you go into your brushes and turn on backface masking. Or if you want to mask all the way through an object, like if you want to drag out a mask but you don't want to mask the back and you don't want to clean it up later, you just got to go through here and say get rid of the visibility of this object, and now you can mask through it all you want, and then just hold down Control Shift and bring it back. Orange says, all right, 2018 is kind of laggy for me. Nice configuration. What's it like before? Can you show me your memory settings? You know why it's laggy when I move to the viewport. I don't really touch these things. I can show you what I have. Where is that? Performance? I haven't touched any of this stuff. But you can check that out. I'm also trying to think. So Sculptures Pro mode is a little bit more memory intensive. So if you have this on, and you also have under those settings here under stroke, I'm all over the place. Sculptures Pro, you have adaptive size and combine. If you're doing combined, which is basically giving you high resolution and low resolution, it's tessellating and decimating at the same time. That can be a little bit memory intensive. So we go into standard brush here and turn on Sculptures Pro mode, standard brush, turn texture off. And what else? Oh, did we have face masking turned on? Mask with polygroups is on. There we go. Now we can turn it on. So you can see we have adaptive size and combine turned on. So this one can sometimes be, we have RGB. There we go. This one can be a little bit more memory intensive and laggy. And it also won't work with backface masking turned on, by the way. However, you can decimate this down first, and that'll kind of speed you up. So Z plugin, decimation master, preprocess current. If you want to just decimate this down to like 10K, that'll get rid of a lot of that overhead. And now you can just go through here and put detail in where you want. Let's turn off lazy mouse here. That might speed you up a little bit. But viewport lag, I'm not sure. Unless, now, if I do have this and I accidentally hit D to give it a dynamic preview, if it's a very, very heavy object, it will slow your machine down quite a bit. So if you accidentally hit dynamic subdiv and turn that on, you can do Shift D or just make sure that isn't on. And if that ever comes up, that little integrity, mesh integrity thing, go down here to mesh integrity fix mesh, and then you can turn that on and off. Scrolling through. Bug where UI buttons are broken and have to restart ZBrush to fix it. Initialize doesn't help. I haven't had that. I have had it come up, where some things are missing, and that's just because you have like a poly primitive, so it looks like it's kind of broken in here. But as soon as I hit make polymesh 3D, it all comes back. But I haven't had anything in my UI break. Although every major release of ZBrush, I remake my UI from scratch. I'll take a screenshot of the old ZBrush, and then I'll just manually go through and rebuild everything from scratch and replace everything from scratch that I like, just because I don't want any weird gremlin stretch compatibility issues. So that might be something. Hannibal says, hey Mike, when you do portraits, I've seen you draw on a flat plane around an orb. How is that done, and can you use that other flat plane over a photo for a likeness? Draw a flat plane around an orb. Flat plane, like around a sphere. I'm not sure what you mean. Like if I painted it, like we did with our guy here. Is this our guy? There it is. Let's turn off solo mode. Delete. Show. That we don't need. This we don't need. Yeah, like when we were painting on Spotlight, you can use this, if this is what you're talking about. You can for sure use this as a way to just kind of put your features where you want them. It may not be perfect, but you'll have to readjust. But for portraits and stuff, you can definitely paint on first and then use RGB. Let's go ahead and turn this movie. Turn off show timeline here. Hey, no problem, Blands. You want to fix my truck? Go for it. I am tired of taking it in. It's getting up to around 130,000 miles. It's a 2008 Dodge Dakota, so it's getting up there. What new changes are there with live booleans? Nothing that I can think of off the top of my head, other than you can do remesh by union. It's in here, but cool. Danny ZBrush says, I downloaded your boot tutorial. Was there a full tutorial on the character? No, unfortunately. That's something, I think I have his recordings, like the making of him. Reminder, take my car in. I did have a version of him, or I do have him recorded, like his entire process of start to finish, just me just doing like a time-lapse recording of him. But I haven't sat down and done a full recording of him, unfortunately. What is going on here? Oh, I have Sculptures mode turned on. Okay, so inflate. Yeah, you can see how it's kind of laggy on here. It's because when I have dynamic turned on, and let's go ahead and again go to brush, AutoMasking. And if you're getting there's a lot too many brushes up here, hit that R. It won't delete any, it'll just clear them out for you. And then we'll go into AutoMasking. Let's go polygroups. And remember, at any point, I can go through here. I can mask one of these things out. And if I can go to Mask Mesh Center, put it right down here, because it might be a little bit easier to take a BendCurve. Wish that was the axis. I see orange in here, and I want to make that the axis here. Actually, let's drop that curve resolution down. Part of the problem is he's got a lot of mesh way underneath his head. You know, the usual polish stuff that isn't very exciting to watch. Cool. Light startup. How can I change it? Light startup. Oh, like your lights in here? I think if anything you do, you change in your light menu, if you just save a, go File, Save As. And in fact, if you always want to be able to pull from this, if you do like ZBrush, no, ZBrush. Here we go. Program Files, Pixelogic, ZBrush 2018, Z projects, and save it in here. Anything you save in here, so we'll call this, save this file in here. So if you have a project set up the way you like it, all you got to do is when you load up ZBrush, it'll go to the project tab, and then you just need to double click on the Z project, and that'll load up ZBrush with all your settings. There's the Startup Master, which I don't think I have loaded, but you can check that out. That'll be on their download page. That might have, I don't know if it has light settings necessarily, but you can certainly give that a shot. But while we're here, and just before, because I'm gonna have to leave, let's take this into KeyShot real quick and see if we can't get an interesting effect. So I'm gonna go ahead and save this. And what do we call this guy? Go Geta. I'm probably pronouncing that perfectly. We're gonna go to streaming. Sure. And then let's go ahead and render, external render, KeyShot, auto merge is fine. We'll throw that over. Oh, that's a good point. Pre-drag, you can load and save your light settings as well. Just like when we were talking about, you can do this with Spotlight, you can do this with the movie timeline, you can save and load just those things. Also within ZBrush itself, under here in the light menu, you can load and save right here. Good point. Is there any sort of emissive or lava, or you know what, let's go to the cloud library here. Let's do a search in here. Clay fire, blasted fire, radium, flaming hot. Let's see what that looks like. I just had this. Come on. Give me a second. KeyShot clown. And hopefully it doesn't show the password, just in case I'm going to drag that off. Not that I don't trust you guys. There we go. So flaming hot. What else? Emissive radial, X-ray emissive. That one looked kind of cool. Hold on. Ooh, it's not what I was looking for, but I like it. Base color, blend with color. It's kind of like a nice metallic kind of look. But if you want to, we can go through here and we can actually just set this to a, let's try like just an area light. That'll light up your scene and your character. Let's go to an environment here. But we're kind of missing some more detail in here. This would be something I'm going to have to play with here. I don't think a simple emissive is going to do it either. It's going to look kind of, whoops. I do like that X-ray emissive though. It's got enough detail in there. Got a color ramp. So we can go through here and we can try to change that, although I think it's doing what we want. Material graph, anything weird going on in here? We've got a curvature going into the opacity. Interesting. All right, well, when in doubt, we could also just start with a plastic. Hard, shiny. And let's go ahead and grab another environment here. We'll grab this one and we'll go into our environment here and we'll just crank up that brightness. So we get detail. You can play around with those settings as much as you want to. Alrighty, everybody. I did make the cyan here. I wonder if we can duplicate this off and give that a self-illuminated kind of look. I mean, you can, let's say, scene, got the head and the hair. Let's duplicate this. And we can scale it by maybe 1.1. I wonder if we want to scale that down. And let's say we want to give this one an area light. But we don't want it visible to camera. So we can still make it look like the stuff's lighting up, but not necessarily visible to camera. I'll give that a shot too. Anyways, I'm going to call it a day here a little bit early just so I can go take a shower and get out of here. So, thanks everybody. Apologize to everybody on Discord and Facebook as well. It's hard for me to, I can't plug it into my Restream. So, yes. Thanks, and I'll see you this Thursday on my channel, on my Twitch and YouTube channel, all that good stuff. As well as, yeah, I'll be here this Thursday, and I want to say next Tuesday as well. So thanks again, everybody, and I'll see you next time.